of exporting the reserves to the yen sphere. Analogously, it's easy to imagine Nestlé with similar options. Traditional themes relating to investment. There's been the phrase gilt-edged bonds, representing a category of bond investments of the highest quality level. But now, in fact, if we think about this, we see that the phrase derives historically from the times of the existence of the gold standard, and thus from the times of currencies having stable values in a quite meaningful and quantitative sense. When the debenture bonds of a sovereign state itself have become really a very speculative area for investment, there have been introduced options like Treasury inflation protected securities, or TIPS in the USA. And there's analogous things, at least in France, that I've learned about. But these alternatives actually introduce for investment a rather speculative area, since the investors must gamble on the comparative merits of TIPS category bonds with lower coupon rates and standard bonds offering higher paper rates. Our opinion: we think it's ultimately desirable for the state relating to a national currency society to have institutions that favor and cultivate the possibilities of reinvestment in the national economy, especially by the intelligent actions of institutions which may themselves be of the type favored by the state with exemption from taxes on income or profits. Economists have learned that higher levels of technology or of industrial or agricultural arts derive from long histories of the feedback of earned assets into the components of the economy, forming the capacity for production at comparatively higher levels of technology, science, or art. So we argue that if the possibility of conservative investments is made easier or easier, that this will favor the reinvestment processes that will favor comparative economic advancement. And then there's another connection. And relations to law and contract. I must say that I skipped some quite essential parts of this. To reach the Greece thing, I had to pass over some technical ideas about the inflation targeting and indexing, cost and price indexes. A concept that we thought of later than at the time of developing our first ideas about idea money is that of the importance of the comparative quality of the money used in an economic society to the possible precision as an indicator of quality of the contracts for performances of future contractual obligations. We have noted, as a matter of general theory, that money provides the practical means for the transfer of utility, and the distinction between games of transferable utility and games with non-transferable utility, or TU and NTU games, thus is typically linked with the question of whether or not there is available the means of money transfers to facilitate a good cooperative game solution, which could be that of a relatively simple game of bargaining. That's where I encountered it first in my own studies. But when there is the dimension of time also incorporated into a contract for exchanges, such as, for example, a mortgage contract or an annuity contract with an insurance company, or a contract for services to be formed over an extended period of time, then the quality of the money unit in terms of which the contract is written makes a big difference in the level of certainty of the contract terms. Uncertainty perturbing the issue of the effective meaning of a contract is comparable to and analogous to a climate of lawlessness that would make contracts in general unreliable. It is reasonable to expect that were the quality of a national currency very high in terms of the stability of the value of the currency unit, then that interest rates on mortgages on the national debt would become comparatively low, as rational expectations would interact with investment options for mortgage and investment bankers. If there were only the alternatives of two varieties of money, of which one of them would appreciate in value compared with the other of them at a constant rate, then it would be reasonable to expect that real interest rates, say for mortgages, could be the same whichever money were used. But the pattern to be expected when there is money that decreases in value compared with real value measures is that this continuing devaluation is not at a constant rate, and the phenomenon of surprise inflation, which has been much discussed by economists, is to be expected. So of course expected, it won't be entirely a surprise. But yet, when Keynesian policies are strongly in effect, one must rationally expect inflation, but also a degree of difficulty for precisely and quantitatively predicting that inflation. So we had a big inflation going up to 2008, and the Social Security brought in an adjustment. Everyone was to be, they were to give a higher amount of Social Security, adjusting to keep it up with inflation. Originally, the legislation for Social Security was written as if there weren't inflation. And but then recently, 2 years have passed, and they calculated again, no adjustment, because some basic foods, commodities, and things like that in the recession have not risen in price. But if you look abroad, gold has risen quite a bit. Coda, this is my ending. In connection with this particular version of the text of our lecture paper on ideal values in connection with money or currencies, we'd like to remark on an analogy relevant to science, technology, and culture on a global level. Consider the metric system, with its headquarters located in a suburb of Paris. This plays a big role in facilitating the precise definition of measures for electronic hardware components, cell phones, and also for medical measures of various types. In the USA, we can still get along well with MPH velocities and comfortably measure temperatures more finely with Fahrenheit. What I want to remark upon is in relation to the units of this system is that inflation is not in fashion. Thus, in terms of our use of physical measures, we do not want that the length of the king's foot should shrink from one reign to another, etc., etc.